So I think I'll bring in the next question for you. Madhuri, you have been with the Office of Admissions from quite some time, from Ashoka, and then I'll also want to open this question, Sagar, for you later on. But what do admissions officers really do see? We'll start with that, Ashoka, Madhuri, for you. And I did see you kind of really agreeing with the reflection points, the cat being saved on a tree. So what are the admissions officers' motive behind that essay that they put in the application form?
Yeah, so one of the ways that I like to talk about it is that compared to most other parts of your application, right, this is going to be the most subjective component, which means that while there are components like your academic performance, your extracurricular records, this is really a part where you get to tell a story of who you are, who you would like us to think you are, right? So that also means getting some time understanding yourself because you need to get through that as clearly as you can to be able to communicate that to others, right? So really one of the things I would say is what, like the reason I was really agreeing with Professor Das is because when you initially sit down to write, you're facing a lot of overwhelm. There are a lot of thoughts that come to your mind. And I'm in agreement that you need to sort through, but also understand how these threads connect with each other. So all the threads that are coming to you, once you figure out a connection between them, you're able to tell a convincing story. And that's not just a story from a form of narrative building and storytelling, the way that you think about stories, but also what happens when you think about yourself. What kind of experiences do you want to collate and why do they matter in cohesion? So I really think when we as admissions officers go through essays, it's like today's day and age, it's not really uncommon to see that, the foraging of information or researching information, that isn't really hard to do anymore. So that makes it all the more important that you bring yourself into it, you bring your personal voice. And I think that assertion of your thoughts needs to happen by drawing parallels, understanding how do you connect with the world. So it's easier to have external expectations, also, like Professor said, to know that, okay, these are topics that are trending. This is what we need to talk about. But a quicker reflection on understanding why does that matter to me? Why is this a cause I care about? And that's really where your personal, self and your voice starts coming through. And I feel like that's something that really has an impact because the application is really a reflection of who you are. And so in that, the essay then becomes really one of those most convincing factors of saying that, okay, I see this person as an individual, which is really hard to do with a two-dimensional sort of paper of an application almost. But I think adding as many dimensions as you can, bringing forth the various life experiences really helps and goes a long way in making sure that because we make that effort to see students beyond their academic and extracurricular record or performance so far. So yeah, I think that would be some of my insights for now.
Okay, thank you, Madhuri. And I would also like for you to step in, Sagar, because I know that you have worked with multiple universities, not just like UK, but also a lot of Southeast Asian universities. And is there something specific that those universities look for in students in terms of like their essay? I know a lot of places where they can write their essays for you, especially students who sometimes go out or apply to Ivy League schools. So in that space, when those tools are available, how important it is then for a student to write it themselves. So if you can help with that also, please.
Thank you. Especially in our industry, we call it, as you call it, SOP, essay, we call it like SOP or maybe a personal statement review. That is the most important factor, for us to actually check the student whether it is a genuine or whether the intention of the student is genuine or not. It also helps the immigration officer also to check because that is the only one page where they can actually see inside the student what they actually think, what they want to do in the future as well. So this page actually, one pager or two pager, actually the major part of their journey, what is going to be the future and why they're going to study abroad or maybe study in a particular university, what actually reflects them. Uh, what we see is there are multiple misconception as well that people and students think that, what actually admission officer wants to hear from us, So what we always suggest students, rather than using fancy language or vocabulary, just use simple language where they can actually reflect themselves, rather than giving them big achievements and telling them the big achievements. They want to hear what you have learned from it. what skills you have gained, what experience you have. They want to hear the story. They want to hear the personal story about yourself, what you have done so far, rather than just giving big fancy words or using fancy language, using chat GPT or AI tools, or maybe taking the help of some other student as well. So this is what they are actually looking for. Uh, an essay or maybe a SOP or maybe the statement of purpose doesn't look perfect. It doesn't has to look perfect. It should have few edges, which can make more real as well, make them more real. So this is what actually the admission officer is looking for, rather than looking for fancy word. They are looking for real narration or maybe a storytelling from the student, what they want to do, rather than big achievement. They want to hear what they have learned from their journey, what what values they can bring to the university when they go to the global classrooms. So this is what actually they are looking for. And these are the misconceptions from the student side. You know, I will be writing those things which probably the admission officer wants to hear from me. Yeah, right.
I think you have shared a very important insight here, Sagar, that they want to just see the authentic voice. And sometimes we get into this whole, and Professor Das also mentioned on that, right? Sometimes we want to, oh, I aced this or I was top in this, but maybe that's not the thing that you should mention. And thank you for bringing that, Sagar, because that very easily helps me to go to my next question for you, Professor. We talk a lot about authenticity in an essay, right? Where we want to really see the real student and their personality. Madhuri mentioned it, Sagar touched upon it, you mentioned it, right? So, how do you really define authenticity in a student essay, and what are some of the markers that counselors can help students identify? So, if you can just help us with that.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of authenticity, I really think of the other word that every writer has to worry about, which is a distinct voice, right? And really, in that sense, then what is it about the voice that can indicate authenticity? So, um, of course, it's. I mean, to begin with, what is it not? It is, as Sagar said, it's not about perfection. Um, but it's also not about telling your life story. You know, when you do storytelling, it doesn't mean that you are giving them some sort of beginning to end version of how you think your life has gone. That's very, very important for a lot of kids to understand, because I think that is a common myth that is perpetrated, I don't know, through many different platforms and among friends as well. How do you condense everything that you've done? That's not the way to think of it. And which is why we begin from that very distinct place of what are the moments that matter to you, that have mattered to you. Now, that itself is all about authenticity, because while many moments might be similar in a child's life, the way you engaged with that moment will be distinct to yourself. And I think that is the story you have to tell. So the storytelling is more about those moments that have mattered to you and how you engaged with them, what remained with you of those moments, and why then that made you think of doing something else, and finding that thread between them. And that is where the distinctiveness of your story and your voice starts emerging. So the first thing is, it's not a life story. It's about really telling the story about the moments. And the second thing is about something to do with the larger dictum of, what Sagar mentioned, no fancy words. No, that's not the point. And at the same time, on the one hand, you have no fancy words, no fancy phrases, and at the other end, it's, don't just leave it entirely to chat GPT, because neither one of those will actually give you your authenticity. Your authenticity will come from within you, right? Not if you're trying to imitate some, well-known personality whom you admire, who speaks English in a particular way. Neither if you are depending on an AI-based app. It's really about how you find the words to tell your story best. So it's not about plainly or blankly looking for synonyms, but it's about find word choices that tell your story best. And when you think of it that like that, it sounds very banal, very simple, very mundane, not banal, but mundane. But I made a choice. I made a word choice, not banal, but mundane. Why? Because that felt true to me. That banality is about not very important. Mundane can be profoundly important and yet seems simple. And that's exactly what it is. That you're looking for words that will explain how that moment felt to you and what you took away from that moment felt to you, to someone who was not there with you during that moment. And so you might even make some word choices which are unexpected, right? And then it's up to you to tell the story, to persuade your reader that yeah, that's what it must have felt like. And that's what authentic voice is all about. Ultimately it comes down to words and how you choose them to be able to mirror or resonate how it felt within you at that moment, how that moment's memory has carried forward within you. I'm sorry if it's beginning to sound very, very psychodynamic, but that's the way I've broken it down during my sessions. Hope that makes sense.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor. So now we'll do a mix of questions that we have received in the chat box, because I think they are here. So I want to make sure that we take care of those questions. Ashutosh has asked Madhuri and Sagar and Professor, you as well, please. What are the cliches and essays that are tiresome for the admission groups? Like they're just tired of seeing it, but students keep still writing them because that's what they have either heard, they have been guided into that. So we can start with Madhuri, and very happy for Sagar and Professor Das to kind of step in and share your thoughts on that,
Yeah,
please.
definitely. I think there are two kinds of essays. One is assuming that you need to talk about an important cause. So that might be climate change, poverty. You just feel like you need to reflect that you are, an individual who's aware. But in a lot of that, you lose the authentic, as what we have been talking about, unless you've done the work to discuss and actually engage with these causes, find out what in your life, what parts of your locality, your space have you impacted from this research, from this care. It really does fall short as a way of just saying, okay, I can show that I care about things. So I think that's one side of it. The other is assuming experiences from your own life that should be important. And by this I mean that there has been a growing pattern of thinking, okay, if I have experienced a certain difficult situation, then knowing that, okay, if I write about it in a certain way, it might be an application that gets through. And I feel like it's not wrong. It's not, we're not, none of us, I think, are going to tell you what you should or shouldn't write about. But I think unless it's complemented with that kind of labor and that kind of understanding of why has this impacted me and how am I actively engaging with that experience, like, in that moment. And I think so a huge aspect of authenticity, I think, is then also shedding a lot of misconceptions or shedding a lot of external influence, then getting closer to the core of, okay, why does this matter to me? So I think that's maybe one of the things that the cliches are: don't write what you think would work for an admissions officer. Because I also do a lot of like sessions where I talk to students and I tell them, you are the best expert on yourself. So don't let anyone else, mislead you on that. Like, we're trying to get to know you better. So the moment you assume what we're looking for, you're already doing disservice to the process. So yeah, that's maybe my 2 cents for now. Yeah.
Thank you, Madhuri. Sagar, Professor Das, please.
Yeah, so usually what happens is like when we used to get the SOPs and the statement of purposes and essays or maybe the personal statement for the students, we used to get very journal answers from everyone. If they are probably, just for example, I'm just giving you, like, if they are probably going for some university to study or somewhere else, they used to do the general research about the university. Okay, I want to study in this university because they have the same general answer. It has the 5-star rating. This, it has the multiple campuses. It has this and that, and everyone has used to get the same answers, the same pattern. And we always used to tell them, do some research about the university by your own. Like, do just don't copy paste it from somewhere else. Don't do these kind of stuff. And when you are elaborating about yourself, don't have the same pattern which probably your friends are using it, maybe some other students are using it. Just try to write your own words in your own style, uh, to feel like they are authentic. Like Madhuri mentioned, this has happened, before as well, with other students as well. So this is what actually we look for. Whether they are going for their own research, or they are probably taking it from somewhere else, and they are trying to get all the taking the help from somewhere else, or maybe they're just trying to have the journal answers on their essays or something like that. So this is what we are looking for actually, not to have the journal answers, or maybe they just need to do their own research by themselves, or maybe try and find about the things which they want to do, maybe going to a university, or maybe put it into an essay or something like that. Yeah.
Professor Das, please.
Yeah, I'd just add to what Madhuri and Sagar have already explained so well. I was saying that, for me, it's three things that really indicate authenticity. I talked about the first two, which is, finding the moments to tell the story. Second is, of course, your, finding the words which are yours. And the third is specificity, making it as specific as you can, which Madhuri spoke about so well. The local, the how do you describe the air in your home or your school or your locality? Literally down to such specifics that indicate authenticity. So the flip side of that is the cliche. So if you think that you can do tokenism and get away with it, tokenism is a big no-no. All the things that Madhuri was mentioning, the climate crisis, and because those admissions officers, those who read college essays, those who, have read a lot, like I've written so many LORs in my life, and I've had to read so many sort of statements of purpose before I write my LORs. I always say you've got to give them substantive information if you are going to talk about these big universal causes, right? Or localize it to something very, very specific that happened that touched your life. Don't try to aim for this big sort of COP30, this is happening and I'd love to be there, or something of that sort, but bring it down to waste segregation in our locality and how by default I became part of it. And that taught me that paper has to be segregated completely separately. And then I gave it thought, sorry, just to give you an example. So that specific, that level of specificity to your local milieu helps a lot. And people who are reading your essays will scratch the surface and very quickly know you are doing lip service. And then that's a big no. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor. I think those are very good points, all from Madhuri, Sagar, and Arpita. I think that will help the counselors for sure, and or anyone who is kind of helping high school students, or anyone writing the personal statement. So we have Kavita Madhuri, who is asking, this is specifically for Ashoka, that Ashoka changed the essay prompt. They reduced the number of activities also from 5 to 3, and she was curious to know why that change has been done. So if we can just help them understand that as well, because I know for a fact that a lot of students do apply to Ashoka as well. If we can just help, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I think really one of the ways that people end up perceiving college applications or just the admissions process is that you put as many things that you have done, and then you overload that sort of application with all of your life experiences. And this is true for the objective components and the subjective components. So, it would be true for you've done an online course, you've done an internship, and you're really itching to talk about everything because you want to say that I've done as many things that you think, that your program would really benefit from me as a resource. But I do think that in the same way that we are talking about the essay as, okay, stripped down to the core of why your voice matters, or what is the voice that you're bringing through, we did a revision of the essay prompts. And that was really like the prompt that you see now is basically a reflection on understanding how your personal and academic experiences or background has impacted who you are. So it's really forcing you to sit with the core question, right? And in the same way that in writing, you prioritize, you strip down, around you, you edit and you really come down with a short-listed sort of, threads that are going to matter, and you're able to put them together. The same goes for the activities as well. One is obviously also an attempt to be inclusive. A lot of students come from schools where they don't get a lot of opportunities. So to assume that, 5 activities is something that matters for all students, or that would be a record that all students might be able to provide, that's also unfair. So when we are assessing in a holistic manner, we also assess, okay, what kind of opportunities has the student received? And in that in that context, how have they performed? Which is also why we encourage students never to feel eliminate themselves based on context or feel excluded just on the basis of that. So 3 activities in a situation where you've done a lot would ideally just urge you to prioritize, to focus, to pick out activities that best speak to the program and best speak to what the program is looking for. So I think that would be an activity of prioritization. But regardless of how many you can mention, just know that that doesn't really change the telling of what your application would do. So it would mostly be an activity of prioritization, which is why our application doesn't allow you to just submit a resume. So the idea is to, do the work, understand which parts are the most relevant to the program, which parts of your life, which kinds of experiences are most relevant, let's say, at the stage of applying to a university program. Yeah.
Thank you, Madhuri. I hope that helps, Kavita. So the chat box is open for questions. Please feel free to put in your questions. We have, of course, set questions, but I would rather hear from you. Professor Arpita, there is one, although that I would really want you to shed some light on. So as counselors, there are a lot of students who reach out to them directly, right? It can often be a struggle to give feedback to students, especially when there are multiple of them, without taking over the student's narrative. So how can the counselors strike, or not just the counselors, but even parents or anyone else who's attending, how can they strike the right balance that they don't take over the student's narrative, but they're still able to kind of guide them in the right direction so that it's as Sagar mentioned, not a perfect, but an efficient statement of essay or a college essay?
Yeah, again, Sakshi, I mean, for me, it's all about creating that safe, inclusive space that we talked about right in the beginning, where you are very self-aware that you are creating a space for students to mine what is important and then writing about it, but you are not writing it for them. And I think it's not rocket science. It's just about giving up that kind of need for control and allowing the students to, not even allowing, I think even to think in terms of allowing is authoritarian, but just enabling, literally enabling the students to be able to tell their own story and to only intervene to remind the students to, be specific, find the words, be authentic, don't fall prey to the need to be very cause oriented just for the heck of it. Just the tips that we are mentioning literally as things to keep in mind to make sure that the authenticity is shines through, just to step in only to remind the students of these things, but not to take over the finding of the words, the shortlisting of the moments, or the grading of the specificities themselves. That's not for you to do as the parent or the counselor. That's if all of that is the child's work that they have to put in. You have to simply remind them to keep them in touch with these specific best practices. It's hard, I know, especially being a parent myself. I know that this can get really hard. My child went to college 3 years ago, and I'm a writing prof, so you can imagine I kept jumping in, and then thankfully I've brought her up to be very, very strong with mama. Let me just find my own way, and thumbs up to that, because that's the only way to do it.
Thank you, Professor. I think these are really good pointers, and honestly speaking, it would be helpful for everybody. Last questions, other than anyone else who have something for us in the chat box. As Professor, you mentioned you have read so many essays. Sagar, you have read so many essays. Madhuri, so many essays, right? What's that one essay that you still remember and that really stood out for you, and why? Because I think that also will be able to give everybody a little bit more insights into what's really like what leaves an imprint on your mind. Because at the end of the day, we are all humans, right? We have set processes, we do a lot of things, but what's that one really thing which stands out? And we'll do it with Madhuri this time. Madhuri will do Professor, and then we'll do Sagar, and then we'll take the last bit.
Oh, thank you. I think one or two essays I remember quite closely. One of them was how a student thought that curls were a very huge part of her personality, and then she was a chemistry major or aspiring chemistry major, and she basically spoke about the chemistry of her curls. And one of the only reasons I like it, I think the way this gets interpreted on the outside is you think you have to write something that unconventional, but that's not really the case. It's just finding out all your interests, understanding how they speak to each other. And the more you're doing that closely, I think you're able to do that a lot better. You're able to communicate more interests of yours while in that very limited space. A similar other case was maybe a student who spoke about how she was born by IVF, and that really urged her to understand biology and sort of look into okay understanding how she came into existence. And I feel like one again, both cases really impressed by not even the writing or how eloquently it was put, but just the fact that um, they sat enough to think about why they care about these things. And again, it's either paying that much attention to mundane activities, like how Professor Das was saying, and Mary Oliver comes in very handy here, where she says attention is the beginning of devotion. So I would say that if the application essay is a form of paying attention to all parts of your life, give it that service, and anything you pay close attention to, and that labor that you do to do that really shows. And I think that creates very striking narratives. Yeah.
Thank you, Madhuri. Sagar, Professor?
An essay that I remember very clearly. Of course, there are many fabulous essays I've read. I mean, I must say these are all, essays which I read before I wrote LORs for students. So from the other side, right? But one I'll never forget is about how and a lot of my students who I write LORs for go on to do MFAs in creative writing, and that's also these are all writers in that sense. But this particular essay talked about how as a child they loved listening to ghost stories told to them by their grandmother, and at some point, when they were old enough, they started to copy out, literally started to copy out, to record the grandmother's ghost stories. And then when they were a little older, they gave themselves a challenge that can I write one? Sounds like this. And that's how they grew their creative writing muscle, which I mean, I thought that was such a lovely thing. They just took one element and sort of ran through it to arrive at their interest in wanting to do a particular kind of course after UG. And I remember what really blew me away is towards the end of the story, they said that at somewhere along the way during my UG in Ashoka, I also discovered that there are other ghosts to be dealt with in my own family, which are the ghosts of caste privilege. And I found that my stories were now also talking about those ghosts. And I was like, my gosh. And of course, the person got a fully funded MFA, got in admission to a fully funded MFA, and I was not surprised at all. I'll never forget that essay. Yeah.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Professor. Sagar?
Yeah, I have one story because when I was working with Australian University, and there was one student who just applied after her year 12 and she wanted to do the bachelor's degree. And unfortunately the visa got refused, and later on, because she had this thing that she always wanted to study abroad, and she had a dream to go there, and the high commission officers, they always look at your personal statement, how you're describing yourself, and probably that SOP was not up to the mark because she was not able to describe herself and what she wants to do in the future. But later, after 3 years, when she completed her degree in India, and she always had a dream to go and study over there, and she applied again to our university. And I can't even imagine, what she did in past 3 years when she was doing the bachelor's degree, and how she narrated herself, and what skills she gained, and how she described in her personal statement. That was actually truly impressive. And when I look at it, and I told her, like, now you will get the visa, because now you are actually reflecting yourself in the personal statement, what skills you have gained. It is actually what, probably a perfect profile would look like, you know. So this is what, and later on she got the visa as well from that particular university, and she was very happy when she reached over there, and she was telling it like, thank you for your help, and and my team members as well, who actually help students to give the interviews as well, how to do the mock sessions, and maybe help them in the SOPs and personal statement part as well. Yeah, this is the story actually I wanted to share.
Thank you, Sagar. We have Vatsraj who has put a question, but I think I would request Vatsu if you can just unmute yourself and ask the question to any of the panel members. Please feel free.
Hi, good morning. I would like to just ask generally, whoever would like to answer, they can. What if the applicant has, at best achieved self-realization about who they are through their life experiences, and whatever is happening around them, why is it happening, where is it guiding them towards, where it is guiding them to in the life, in their own lives, and as a result of all of those lived experiences, now they want to follow a certain professional course in their life. They want to do something out in the world professionally. So would this be something you'd look for, because it will have a lot of personal stories?
Professor, you want to take it forward?
Yeah, I mean, I would definitely want to also hand it over to someone like Madhuri or Sagar, who would actually be looking at a college essay. But for me, it's really about, I mean, it is actually about realization and epiphanies. That is what we've been talking about. That is the kind of, specificity and personal sort of storytelling that we are looking for. If you are talking about, if you what you are asking is about how do you know which ones to pick, then I do one thing. I always go back to my critical writing classroom pedagogy, which is that when we build arguments, we always connect arguments, we gather evidence and connect the strands of evidence to the argument we are building. And the evidence strands that don't really support our argument that well, we keep them aside. And I think that's really the same method you have to apply here. You are talking about, you are trying to connect the dots between the epiphanies that you have experienced in the moments of your life with what you want to study further and where you want to study it. And you're connecting those dots, and you will immediately know, you will be able to sift and know which moments will therefore support that argument of wanting to study that particular thing in that particular place the best, and you pick two or three of those. you know I think keeping it that sort of focus always helps. Yeah, I don't know if I've answered your question, but maybe Madhuri and Sagar would do
No,
it
this
better.
what you said definitely does help.
Thank you.
Like, sift through all those experiences and pick the ones which can be relevant for the person who's reading, to make better sense of yourself.
Okay, so we'll take the last two questions. Madhuri, there is someone in the questions who has asked if they can share, if we can share a sample structure of current essay prompt for Ashoka. So if you can answer that, and other than that, we have Garima who has asked us, how many number of drafts does it take to get to the final essay submission? When should we draw the line to submit? Because editing can be an endless process. So that's the second question.
Yeah. Earlier, we used to attach sample applications to the, that website, and we saw that often students would see and try to mimic a structure, which is the only reason why now you wouldn't see any kind of structure with a response, because that would be like a disservice. Don't look at us and think about what how you should be presenting yourself. So I would say the best like application. There's no one structure. There are different ways to do this. Just speaking to a lot of how we've been reflecting on the personal, the world, understand that connection is very important. Either if it's connection with the world, if it's connection with yourself, which means while you're reflecting on your experiences, you need to form some sort of inferences from that, right? So support all of that you were trying to talk about with actual reflection, inferences. What kind of things is it revealing to you about yourself? So I would say there is no one particular structure. As much as I hate to say this, that's a journey you have to take yourself on. And it really helps that Professor Das is here to help you with it. But at the same time, I have attached to one of the answers, I've attached a link to the on the spot essay prompts. Again, that's a whole different question. But a lot of the places in our application form that could require additional assistance, support to even know what you can expect. We've attached a lot of samples. So just go through the website exhaustively, and I think you will be good. So that's the first question. I wanted you to repeat what Garima was asking. Sorry.
Yeah, Garima's question was how many drafts till the last submission? Because it can be endless. And I see Professor Harpita just shaking her head.
Yes.
So I think I will let Professor Das to take this forward. Professor.
I think we are all on the same page, huh? Sagar, Madhuri. Um, I mean, there's no one answer because it's how you approach this, yourself, and how much time you take to feel like you have told your story, found your words, made them as specific as possible, just ticked all those authenticity boxes. Maybe have that checklist by your side, or any other checklist that you get from somewhere else. My checklist, as I said, is find the moments, tell the stories of the moments that really matter, find the words for it which are your own, and make sure they are very, very local and specific to your milieu. So, and of course, edit for language, for style. Um but if you feel you are falling down the rabbit hole of going back to it again and again, I think I mean, for me, I believe in writing communities. So I would always have that one person, whether in your family or in your friend circle, among your peers, or someone whose word you really trust, and who you would trust to read it and say, I think it's done now. Keep calm and submit, as you all say. So, but there's no template to this. This is really your own kind of your process, and you have to give yourself permission to go through whatever time that needs. I mean, would you agree, Sagar, Madhuri?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Okay, and I think Garima also agrees, so that's good. We like agreements. But I think with that, we are done with the second portion of the webinar. We have just last bit, but before that, before I pass on to Isha, thank you so much, Sagar. Thank you so much, Madhuri. I would request everyone to stay for some time. And thank you so much, Professor Das, with all the Zoom fiasco in the beginning. It's so good. I think you
I'm
add a lot of value.
so sorry for that, but
No
I just,
worries. I
anyway,
I
I figured it
actually
out. I
I
figured it.
myself got a little late. I thought I have like it's at 12 o'clock and I got at 58. Oh, it's not. But thank you so much, everybody.
So
Really,
much.
really
Thank you.
appreciate you spending our time on a Saturday. Isha, all over to you.
I have to say, the best question that I got the best responses to was the one that the essays that stuck the most with you all. Because I think every question that we were asking before that was a bit conceptual, abstract. But when you shared the examples, we could see all of the skills you all had been mentioning being put into practice. I think just the brief mention of the chemistry of curls is something that I'm going to think about the entire day because it's so interesting. And it feels like something that you're able to come up with individually rather than it coming from the lens of how would I appear to someone else. And I know that that's something that students really want to be able to tap into. Professor Arpita has been speaking of creating that safe space, and I'm very, very glad to actually share with all of you that we're going to have the opportunity to be able to create that space with her itself. So, if you all give me one moment, I'll be able to speak more about the course that Professor Arpita is taking with Horizons Achievers program this winter, where students will be working on building narratives for self. I think the panel discussion that we've been able to have today has really touched upon some of the integral questions that they'll be getting into depth over December and January this year. Uh, it's something that will be helpful for students, not just for creating their personal statements or SOPs, because you'll also come to notice that it's going to be different for different universities, but also different stages of your life, right? I think writing a personal essay is something that never really escapes us because once it starts off with a personal statement, then it moves on to a cover letter. But you really, really do need to know that skill of being able to speak of your story. And I think that's something that we'll be really diving deep into with the course. Some of the course dates are mentioned here, and there'll be more details for it in the website page, which I'll share the link for in the chat box as well. I just wanted to go over this so that while we've been able to have this really fruitful discussion as to how counselors can help students, I think this course can actually be a way for skills to build, for students to build that skill themselves. I also want to open it up for Professor Arpita to speak slightly about the course, maybe give a little glimpse so that counselors can also learn of what we're offering in this course. And I'll take it forward to share the link in the chat box as well. I also do know that Sheija has a question, so please know that I have noted you and I will be asking you to ask that question after we're done with this section. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Isha. So I'm really excited about this course that we're running this winter for the Horizons Achievers program. I have a wonderful teaching fellow by my side, Tanay Sane, and we've taught together before. He was actually my teaching assistant for a writing course, creative writing course earlier at Ashoka. So we have a really good working relationship. And basically, the idea of the course was really to take you back to first writing the self. I mean, I think that's where we're going to begin. So that first bit that I was talking about what are the moments, the first, just to enable, create a space where we enable you to find those moments that you can then tell stories about and connect further to where you want to study and why you want to study it in a way that really sounds authentic. I think that's the base of the program. And then, of course, we handhold you. The idea is also to handhold you through a pedagogy that I've sort of figured out that makes, I mean, these inflection points that I feel are particularly important in terms of building these narrative, what I call these narrative arcs, so that there is this sense of continuity, because the sense of continuity is very important in authentic storytelling. People look for arcs, right? It has to have that beginning, middle, and end for it to really, be substantive. And under that, some of the things we talked about in terms of what does authentic voice indicate, what does authentic voice entail, and how do we then tell those stories and sort of fill in those narrative arcs with an authentic voice. What are the ingredients of that authentic voice? I think that's sort of, these are the sort of points that we take the course through. And of course, the end of it, the capstone being a college essay a submittable college essay. I'm very excited also because I think we've created some space, Isha, to for me to do a bit of mentoring with some students. I love doing mentoring. I teach. I love one-on-one office hours. So we've also created some space for that for some students. And, it's just about trying to approach this very, very this idea of writing a college essay has become so templatized, and basically trying to bust that and really trying to get to the root of it, the real sort of substantive root of it, which is about writing the self. Does that make sense?
I think that's been a great, great sneak peek into the course and the pedagogy
you.
that's going to go behind it. Thank you so much, Professor, for walking us through what you've planned for the students. I hope that really gives a great glimpse into what we have planned for the students, to the counselors, and the students who have joined us today. And also move on to the next slide, because that'll help you just scan the QR code and get to the website that'll actually give you more information about it. We also have the deadline fast approaching on 1st December. So I would really recommend that students start working on their applications and enroll as quickly as possible. You can also write to us at horizons@ashoka.edu.in if you have any questions at all. With this, I'll stop sharing my screen. I'm hoping that I'll wait for 10 more seconds for people to scan the QR code. And then I'll also open it up for more questions that we may have.
Also, additionally, for the counselors who have joined us or even students, we are doing a series on our social media, both LinkedIn and Instagram, where we have tried to get more perspectives. So there are a lot of other people who read essays or who help students, other professors, faculty members who are sharing their 2 cents in terms of what is really helpful to write an impactful essay. So do follow that. That I think will also give you lots of tips and tricks to kind of just guide students along whenever you have time, either on LinkedIn or social media. But thank you so much, everyone. Really, really happy to spend the Saturday with you.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks, Sakshi. Thank you, Isha. Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Madhuri. Thank you, Sheila. Everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Sagar.
everyone.